There was a forest fire ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared that all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balaram, saved them simply by closing his eyes. Such are the superhuman activities of the Lord. Although in this verse the Lord's activities have been described as superhuman, it should be noted that the Lord's activities are always superhuman, and that distinguishes him from the ordinary living being. Uprooting a gigantic banyan or arjuna tree and extinguishing the blazing forest fire simply by closing one's eyes are certainly impossible by any kind of human endeavour. But not only are these activities amazing to hear, but in fact all other activities of the Lord, whatever he may do, are all superhuman, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Whoever knows the superhuman activities of the Lord due to their very transcendental nature becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of Krishna. And as such, after quitting this present material body, the knower of the transcendental activities of the Lord goes back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada Ki. So first of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and my spiritual master, all the devotees in the room. And I ask the senior devotees for their blessings so I can say something of use. So this is a bit of a continuation on from yesterday. So anyone who was at yesterday's class, it was a fantastic class by Ramaya Swami. It was about the chastisement of Kalia, which is an amazing pastimes of Krishna. So I'm going to continue on what happened straight after that. So Krishna had just chastised Kalia, and he said that he arose from the river Yamuna, and he was covered with beautiful garlands, fragrances. He had beautiful ornaments. And when the cowherd boys first seen him come from the river, they all rushed to him and embraced him with so much love, because they were also fearful that he may have lost his life, seeing him take on Kalia. And it is said that on the banks were his mother and father, and it's said in the 10th canto that the vitality of their body had just completely stopped while this battle was happening. They couldn't breathe, they were struggling to move, their bodies were shaking. And once they seen Krishna was okay and arising from that river, they started to gain all their sensories back and came back to normal. And it is also said that while this is happening, Balaram comes running past, and he's just got a big smile on his face. All the other inhabitants were really afraid and scared for Krishna. But Balaram just came past, smiling, giggling. He knew the power of Krishna. And he grabbed Krishna, and he places Krishna on his lap. And he said that he's just staring at Krishna over and over again. He's just completely in love with Krishna. And all the cows, bulls and calves who were in the facility there on the banks, it is said that they attained the highest pleasure from just seeing this. It was just such a blissful experience. Then, after Balaram let go of his embrace, Mother Yashoda came over and she grabbed Krishna. It is also said in the 10th canto that tears were just flowing from her eyes like torrents of rain. She was just in so much joy that Krishna was safe and back in her arms, and she just didn't want to let him go ever again. And then the Brahmanas came up to Nanda Maharaj and they were saying you should offer some cows and gold to the Brahmanas because Krishna was saved, and he did so. And all the inhabitants were there on the banks, and they didn't go home that night. They all stayed on the banks. And he said that they were really tired and they didn't really feel like walking home. So they all set up camp there. And some people may say, well, why didn't they drink the milk from the cows? They could have had a drink, they could have got fed. But it is said by Jiva Goswami mentions in one of his commentaries that the reason why they didn't drink the milk from those cows is because they were afraid that Kalia might have poisoned the cows, and some of that poison may have been in the milk, so they didn't touch the milk. And there were some other reasons why they stayed on the banks. There were some other reasons why they stayed there, it is said, but I can't think of them right now. So yeah, they took rest on the banks there, and that's when the big forest fire started. So this was just after the Chastisement of Kalia. And it is said in some other commentaries by Sanatana Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that the forest fires, there's a chance that the forest fire was started by an associate of Kalia. And it is also said that maybe Kamsa was involved. That was in their commentaries. But in the Bhagavad Gita here it just says that, dry mulch and leaves and things like this. So the fire starts and all the inhabitants are there. And they're all so worried, they're all so concerned. They're worried that they're going to lose sight of Krishna again. And Krishna comes to the rescue. We see here all the inhabitants of Raj have completely taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. They have full faith in Krishna. And Krishna just gets rid of that fire just like that. And these are the superhuman powers of Krishna. And we have fires here sometime, and we can't just look at a fire and just make it disappear, or just get out something and just wave it around. We have to ring the fire brigade, and Ajita gets like a $500 fine and chastise a person who starts the fire. So yeah, these are the superhuman activities of Krishna. We see so many superhuman activities throughout the scriptures. He completely destroys demons when he's young. At the age of 7, he lifted Govardhan Hill with his left hand on his little pinky finger. The universe within his mouth. So there's so many of these superhuman activities that Krishna performs. He comes in so many sizes, forms and times. I'm back on the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 at the moment, and there's a beautiful story about Krishna, who once again has his superhuman strength, as he always does, but he's just the size of a thumb in the womb of a Tara, protecting Parikshit Maharaj. It's when Asvatthama, he wanted to take out the Pandavas headed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, and he releases his Brahmastra to destroy them, and also their only grandchild, Parikshit Maharaj. And Krishna appeared in the womb, just as the size of a little thumb, but still with all his power. And he's described within that part of the Bhagavatam that he's wearing a lightning gold dhoti, and his helmet's a lightning yellow dhoti, and his helmet's molten gold. And this gets the attention of Parikshit Maharaj, and he's with all his paraphernalia. So he can come in any size, he still has that strength. He comes in any time, as Lord Ram 18 million years ago, something like that, in Triya Yuga. And he comes in so many different forms: Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Nrsimhadev. And some people may read all of these superhuman activities by the Lord, and they may say, this is some mythical, psychedelic experience that these people are having. This can't be real. And I remember before I met the devotees, I was into Radhanath Swami. I didn't know he was associated with the Hare Krishnas. I just knew that he was a monk, and he had really nice classes on YouTube and podcasts. So I would be watching his YouTube videos and also his podcast. And this one day I downloaded a podcast, and he was on a show called the Duncan Trussell Show. This was about 7 years ago. And Duncan was asking Radhanath Swami about all these activities that the Lord does, which we've been talking about today. And he said to Radhanath Swami, surely you don't think that these are real? Like, these are probably some of the most psychedelic, out of this world stories that I've ever heard. And he looks at Radhanath Swami and he's like, do you really think that these stories are real? And just with so much conviction and so much faith and that sweet, gentle voice that Radhanath Swami has, he's just like, yes, of course I do. Why wouldn't you? And I just thought that was very sweet, and that also gave me some more faith just hearing Radhanath Swami say that. It's not blind faith, there's reason behind this faith. So it's not just blind following it, there's reason behind it. And there's a story which explains reason behind faith, which Prabhupada would tell sometimes, and most devotees would have heard it in this room, the Cobbler and the Brahmana. It explains a little bit about faith. It explains how Narada Muni is travelling and he comes into contact with his Brahmana. And his Brahmana says to him, you're going to see the Lord. Can you please ask him a question for me? He's like, yeah, no worries. Can you please ask the Lord when my salvation will come? And Narada Muni's, okay, no worries. I'll ask him. I'll get back to you. And he continues on his journey. And there's a cobbler there, and he's mending some shoes. And he asks, the cobbler asks Narada Muni, I hear you're going to see the Lord. Can you please ask a question for me? No worries. Can you please ask him when my salvation will come? So Narada Muni starts to take his journey to the planets. And he goes and sees the Lord. And he asks about the Brahmana and the cobbler. And he asks, the Brahmanas ask, when will his salvation come? And the Lord says, many, many lifetimes. I do not know when he's going to come home with me. And he was kind of shocked when he first heard that. He's like, I don't understand. He goes, you will understand soon. Then he asks about the cobbler. And the Lord says, the cobbler's coming back this lifetime. And Narada Muni was shocked. This cobbler's just there, he's just mending shoes. And he's going back this lifetime. And this Brahmana who's there, who's reading books and chanting all these mantras, he's not coming back this lifetime. He's got to wait many, many lifetimes. And he goes, you will soon understand. When you go back and you let them know, they'll ask you, what am I doing? And you tell them that I'm threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And he's like, oh, okay. So he goes to the Brahmana. And the Brahmana's like, oh wow, you've been to see the Lord? He's like, yes. He goes, what's my Lord doing? He's like, he's threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the Brahmana's like, nonsense! No way an elephant can fit through the eye of a needle. And then Narada Muni's kind of understood, oh wow, okay. There was no faith there. Then he goes up to the cobbler, he's just mending his shoes. What's my dear Lord doing when you've seen him? And he said, he's threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the cobbler was just over the moon. My dear Lord, he can do anything. Anything's possible. Nothing is out of range for my dear Lord. And Narada Muni's seen here that it's faith, this faith and true conviction in Krishna, which brings one to Krishna, which helps one understand Krishna. It's not a question of blindly believing. There's reason behind it. And the cobbler went on to say that I'm underneath this tree. And there's so many fruits coming from this tree. And within each of them there's a seed. And from that little seed, a massive tree grows out of that seed. And that's all the Lord's handiwork. So is it really that hard to understand that he can do any of these other things? Threading an elephant through the eye of a needle, taking a certain size, putting a forest fire out with his breath, or merely just looking at something? These are the potencies of the Lord. He's able to do anything. I said this last class, but when I was young, I used to spend some time with the church. I was really interested in God, and I'd go on these little like Christian Harinam kind of things, and I'd walk down the street and there'd be like 50 of us. So I had this in my head since I was a young boy. We would walk around the street singing, "My God is so big, so strong and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do." And there was a whole song built around that. But when that's put into your head as a young child, you actually start to believe that anything's possible for the Lord. I may have plenty of restrictions, but He can do anything. So I'm very grateful for that experience as a child. You guys have a great time chanting in the streets. So yeah, it's this superhuman is around us. Superhuman Krishna is around us every day. And I wanted to talk about how Krishna is involved in our everyday life right now. We can read about these pastimes, but it's happening right now. And I wanted to talk a little bit and marry this into what I'm talking about here. We just recently went on a tour, travelling up north, and we were doing books and Harinam in all the coastline. And we had some amazing stories which shows Krishna's potency when you're out there on the streets. I'll start with a couple of people I've met and go on to some of the other devotees who were with me. There was this one time when I was in Cairns and I was with Nick, and we were walking down the streets of Cairns, just stopping people in the streets. And there was this tradesman, and he was sitting on the bench and he was having his lunch. And by looking at him, the mind thinks things like, no way he's into spiritual life, he would be interested in meditation, but you just go with it. And I go up to him and I say, "Hey, I'm a travelling monk, I'm sharing some Indian philosophy on meditation and yoga." And he kind of just jumped. And he goes, "You wouldn't believe it, I'm looking for books on that right now, on philosophy and meditation. I want to start. I've had this thought in my head right now." And he'd just got back from the bookshop, but he went to the bookshop to get these books on philosophy and meditation, but it was shut. So he was sitting on this bench and he's just thinking to himself, he said to me he's disappointed that he couldn't get the books because he was so eager. He had this drive within his heart that he needed some spiritual philosophy and some information on meditation. So when I just appeared and just said, "Hey, I've got some philosophy for you and some books on yoga and meditation," he was just so shocked. But it just shows Krishna's potency, how he can just put you in the right place at the right time to fulfill these people's desires, especially when it comes to awakening the God consciousness which is within their heart. And there was another girl she was window shopping, and this was at Kalundra in Cairns. And I kind of seen her, I kind of went up behind her, I'm like, "Excuse me," and she didn't turn around. I'm like, "Excuse me." And she turned around and she was looking at all these, I think it was handbags or something. And she kind of got shocked and she's like, "Where did you come from?" I'm like, "Oh, we're just travelling around Australia sharing this ancient philosophy." And she's like, "This is amazing." She said although she was looking in the windows at all these bags, she was actually thinking about how she can learn more about herself and deepen her own understandings about life. And just as she was looking at all these handbags, she was thinking, "I need to take up some kind of meditation practice." So although she's looking at all these bags, then I just had this feeling to go up to her and kind of tap her on the shoulder and like, "Hey, I've got this for you." And that's what she was actually looking for, not the handbags, this philosophy. So yeah, it's really amazing. And Premanjali had some really nice experiences. She was quite amazing on books. She can talk underwater. I made a mistake one day. She had really bad stomach cramps one day, and I was like, well, maybe you should just stay home. And she's like, no, I need to go out. I need to do books every day. She had this idea she had to do a certain amount of books and a certain amount of money. And I'm like, okay. And I thought I bought some Panadol. I made a little kit to take with us before we left, with all goodies in there, like Band-Aids and just in case someone injured themselves. And I said, look, I've got some Panadol. And I gave her the Panadol. Then after a while I looked at the packet of the Panadol and it said Panadol Extra with caffeine. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh no, I've given Prem Anjali caffeine. She's already the most highly energetic person I know. But yeah, when she hit the street, she was just on complete fire. I think she made, I don't know how many books she did that day. Maybe it was 30 something, and she made about $300 and something in an hour. It was something like this, and she was just running after people. Hey, take this book, and they're just taking books. And there was this one man, and she went up to him, and he was an old gentleman, and he's like, look, I don't want anything to do with you Hare Krishnas. You guys are crazy. I'm not going to give you any money, and I'm not going to take any books from you. But there Prem is. She's got like this really sweet heart. She can talk so much. She's got the smile. She can convince people. And also she's just topped up to the max on caffeine. And after about 20 minutes, he started to break a little bit. And he was like, actually, I might take this book here. And he got the Bhagavad Gita. He gave like $20 or something. And she kept talking to him more and more. And he ended up taking the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this man who said he wanted nothing to do with the Hare Krishnas, he didn't want to give any money to the Hare Krishnas, and he had no interest in reading, all of a sudden gave like a beautiful donation to the Hare Krishnas, and he's probably at home now reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. So yeah, Krishna's this handiworks out there in the streets, and it's really amazing to see. And I know that Connor also had a really amazing experience with Krishna arranging things nicely. And there were some ladies with the yoga mats, and they just came up from the beach, and they're on the beach actually talking about the soul, and wanted to know more about the soul, more about life, more about liberation and all these kind of things. And as Connor does when he sees people, he goes straight up to them and presents the Bhagavad Gita to them. And once again, they were just shocked. Where did you come from? We were just talking about this right now. I can't believe there's a man standing on the street with all these books, the books that we're looking for. So yeah, it's really amazing. And we had Nick out in the street. He was the one attracting all the Krishna village people who had been to the Krishna village. It's really amazing to see all around Australia all the people who have been to the Krishna village. And this farm community is just known all up the coastline. It's quite famous. But for some reason, anyone who'd been to the Krishna village, they met Nick. And most of them didn't get a book while they were here, so they have books now. And that's Krishna's arrangement. They came here, they got a taste for Krishna consciousness, they had some Mahaprasadam, they had the association with devotees, and they're just getting on with their lives out there. Maybe they think about it every now and then a devotee just turns up, bang, here's the books, here's the next stage, and they get the books. So yeah, you see Krishna's handiwork out there everywhere, and it's really, really amazing. And we also had some pretty funny experience out there, and I think we also got protected, maybe like the residents of Raj there by the fire, except we got protected by wild Australian animals. When you go up north, there's these beautiful beaches, and it's kind of strange. You go up there, and when you're from here, like, wow, there's no one at these beaches. And when I was younger, I seen this movie, The Beach, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio, and he escapes the world and goes and lives on this beach. And the beach is beautiful. It's like nice blue crystal waters. There's beautiful sand. So I would go to these beaches, and we're like, wow, it's like being Leonardo DiCaprio. There's no one here. We've run away from the world. And every now and then we'd be like, I hope there's no like dangerous like creatures in this water. So we swam in there a few times and we were just in ecstasy. The water was really warm. The more shallow you went, it was kind of really hot. It was like taking a hot bath. And the last day, kind of seen some big stingrays. And we're like, oh wow, here's some big animals here, sea creatures. And we went back to the temple that night. We were staying at the Mackay Temple. And a man, his name was Tiger, he came to see us. The most Australian man I've ever met. And I was like, hey Tiger, we've been swimming down this water down here and just no one's there. It's like really peaceful. The water's beautiful. And he was like, wow, I can't believe you've been swimming there. He goes, last year they pulled 4 crocodiles from that water. And he said, but I think you're okay. He goes, in November, that's when the crocodiles come and all the poisonous jellyfish. And we looked at my watch and it was 2 days from November. And actually in those waters there were some of the most poisonous jellyfish in the world. And there's been cases from people getting stung by jellyfish where we were swimming, and they would actually get paralyzed, like their limbs would go paralytic, like paralyzed arms for like years. So yeah, we got protected there. We were very lucky. There was many other things he said which were in those waterways. But yeah, that explained why it was so empty and no one was swimming. We also had another funny experience. We were doing the markets at Port Douglas, and we're doing books. We're going around. We had a really big day in the books. That was probably our biggest day, and the markets got hold of us and they're like, well, you can't be doing this. These people are paying to be here. You're just going around selling these books. We're like, we're not selling these books, we're donation. Like, no, you've got to go. But they said, look, you can busk. These people are standing over here playing guitar, so if you want to do something like that, you can do that. Then we were thinking, I don't think she's ever met the Hare Krishnas. And we went and we got all our instruments, the drums, harmonium, cartels, wampers. And next minute, we're walking through this markets with this really like loud Harinam. We walk past a lady, she's got all the workers around her like in her ear, like, what did you tell those guys they could do? So we just ended up doing this big Harinam around the markets. They were really regretting, I could see, what they told us we could do. And Connor just sat at the back of the Harinam and people were just approaching him, just getting Bhagavad Gitas from him. So it made a very smooth road for us actually. But yeah, once again, Krishna just was there with us. And I wanted to share a realization I had while I was away. When you're out on the streets, what we're trying to do, we're looking, we will call it the dry grass. So we're trying to find this dry grass. People who are just ready to like, you know, they see a book or they hear about Krishna consciousness and they just take off. Or just someone who's just really blissful and happy and they're happy to hear about Krishna consciousness. But some days when you're out in the street, that's very hard to find the dry grass. It's like you're just walking through like a wet rainforest, there's nothing happening. It's like no, 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 no. Some people may like say some very harsh words to you. You know, you get the fanatical Christians trying to like, you know, shut you down. So it takes some time to find people who are interested in God consciousness and these higher topics which are spoken about within these books. So it made me think about on the farm, and everyone on this farm is super dry grass. They're already here. They've taken the Krishna consciousness. They're a light. They're taken to the spiritual path. But sometimes as devotees we kind of lose sight of that. And we lose sight of sometimes how hard it is to get someone to the platform where they're actually practicing Krishna consciousness by following the regulative principles, by chanting their rounds, associating with devotees. So these people are here, they're the driest of grass, and they're gems. And they're really, really hard to find out in the street. And I had a realization that sometimes within communities, whether it's here or other communities around the world, we can have a tendency to maybe be hard on ourselves and hard on others. So I had this realization that, you know, we've really got to be understanding and loving and kind to all the devotees that have just got to that level, and really cultivate them, because they're so hard to find out in the streets. So I just had this realization of, this is myself, that just to be more kind and more loving and more compassionate to all the devotees around me, because I actually see now how much of a rare gem a devotee is. Because, after travelling around up the coastline of Australia for 4 weeks, it's very rare. You might find a couple people each day who are really eager for Krishna consciousness, but even out of those people who we've seen as really eager, maybe 1 or 2 of them will actually take to the process. So I just seen that everyone here is gems and amazing and really dry grass, and I just seen within myself that I can fix a few things within myself and maybe appreciate people more and really understand, try to understand more where they're at and things like that. So it's, I'm very fortunate that I get to live my life amongst the dry grass. When you're around dry grass, it obviously ignites yourself and it helps you take more to Krishna consciousness. And I think that was probably my biggest realization, and also just how fortunate we are to live in a place like this. This, when Srila Prabhupada first came to the West, he said, and then he sat on that park bench, and that man sat next to him, and he was like, I've got 108 temples. And he's like, where are they? And he's like, they're not here yet, but just time separating. So he had full faith in these temples and what they could do. And 50, 60 years down the track, we see what Srila Prabhupada's given us, and it's just, that out in that world, it's a very harsh, heavy place at times. Obviously, there's niceness about it, but when you're in a place like this, it's just completely ecstatic. It's when you're in a place like this is real life. This is what life's all about. And that's the reason to go out, I suppose, to give people a taste of this real life, this Krishna consciousness. So I hope, from our tour, a few people take to Krishna consciousness. We met some really nice people, so that would be really nice. And the people did say that there's a lack of Hare Krishna tours up there, because they hadn't been seeing them for many years, since the 70s and 80s. And a lot of people know Rupa Raghunath, because he does like solo tours up there every now and then, so he's quite famous up there, up the coastline. And also Krishna Gam with his catering. So so I suppose to marry all that in, and you see the residents of Raj when this was taking place and the forest fires were happening, and the residents, they didn't want to lose sight of Krishna. They had complete faith in Krishna about his protection, to get his protection. And that's what we're trying to give people. We're trying to give people that shelter, because the world's a nasty and harsh place. I experienced that firsthand. So to go out there and give people an opportunity to take shelter of Krishna and actually give people that faith, because it makes life much easier, much more peaceful, much more joyful, and just completely ecstatic. So I'll finish there. If anyone's got any questions, corrections, comments.
Thank you very much for this very wonderful class. I guess we're lucky we all give up smoking all the time. My question is, you were talking about faith earlier in the class, that there's just something behind it, and you tell that wonderful pastime of the cobbler, but you didn't really elaborate on what's behind it. What gives somebody that genuine faith?
Well, it was Radhanath Swami was explaining it's when you see things around you, like when you see like the fruit fall from a tree with a seed in that, And that seed then becomes a big tree. So it's looking more deeply at things, not just seeing things as, wow, this is just falling, this is just growing, there's nothing behind that. Trying to see Krishna behind everything. Because if we do, sit still and take a good look around us, we can see that magnificence within everything around us in this world. So Radhanath Swami was explaining that he gets it from just the world around him. Yeah, does that make, yeah?
Thank you for that. And tell us about your adventures. Also, I was thinking about faith. So faith is when Krishna reveals himself to us, which he does all the time. We just have to be looking for him. So that woman, for instance, who was looking for a handbag,
yeah,
and then you showed up and you gave her what she was really looking for. So that's Krishna revealing himself. So that's where the faith also comes. When someone goes, wow, I was just thinking of that, and I was really wanting that in my life, and there it is. It's like that's just a miracle. So in that way, we can also see that Krishna reveals himself to us all the time when we're looking for him.
Yeah.
And that's how we can develop a strong faith, through that experience. And I was just reflecting when you were speaking about the pastimes of Krishna early on. So when he was here, having his pastimes and his adventures, throughout that time he was constantly giving his friends, his family, his devotees, anyone that was around him an opportunity to take shelter. So he was showing the world how we can take shelter. Because constantly there was obstacles. There was forest fires, there was demons, there was the Battle of Kurukshetra, the Pandavas went through. One day after day they were going through challenges and the stuff that they had to go through. So he was constantly there in their lives, whether he was actually present in front of them or he was, somewhere else, throughout that time that he was on this earth. Yeah. And so devotees had the opportunity to take shelter in him. And I was just reflecting how that's given us some kind of a guideline, so to speak, of how to take shelter. Anything happens, you just go, Krishna, please just can show up for me. And then also when it's a good time, we also take shelter in him because we're grateful for him. And we're like, thank you for being in our life.
That was one of the realizations that I'd mentioned. You see the residents in that pastime, how they took complete shelter of Krishna. And they feel safe and protected. And you see out there in the world, people aren't feeling safe, they aren't feeling protected. So by going out there and sharing Krishna consciousness, it gives them an opportunity to take shelter of Krishna and also feel protected. Because it's not a nice place to be when you feel unsafe and not protected. But Krishna provides that. He's the ultimate protector. So it's really nice to go out there and give people an opportunity to feel like those residents of Raj who felt so protected by Krishna. There's no difference now to then. Krishna will protect. Rupa Raghunath.
Thanks for your class and beautiful stories. So one of the points for the story you gave, the Brahman and the cobbler, was that the cobbler also had so much faith because he was very humble. Because he was so realised that Krishna was so great and he could do anything. And when he was told that he would come back to the spiritual world at the end of his life, he was thinking, I don't deserve this. I'm so fallen. Yet my Lord is so kind. But on the other hand, the Brahman, he didn't have that faith because he was checked by pride. He was so proud when the Lord told Narada Muni to tell him that he won't come back to the spiritual world for millions of lifetimes. He was thinking, what's this? I'm so qualified. I'm so such a learned scholar. So that was checking his faith and his spiritual advancement, that pride.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki